Daniel never thought life would turn out this way. When he signed up for the interspecies roommate program, he imagined something strange but maybe exciting. He pictured clumsy conversations, strange food on the table, maybe some awkward moments about culture. But he never imagined sharing a home, and even more, a bed, with an alien girl who would hold him like a stuffed toy at night. Her name was Lyra. The first time Daniel met her at the spaceport, he thought he was dreaming. She was tall, taller than him by at least a head, her skin soft and pale lavender like the sky at dusk. Her hair shimmered faintly under the light, strands catching hints of silver, and her eyes glowed faintly blue, like stars dimmed by sadness. She wore clothes that seemed too simple for someone so otherworldly, but she carried herself with the heavy silence of someone who had lost too much. At first, everything between them felt professional. She spoke carefully, her words heavy with an accent but full of effort. She kept her things stacked in neat corners of the small apartment, and she tried hard to respect the human rules she had learned. Sometimes she copied Daniel, waiting for him to start before she followed, like when eating rice or folding laundry. Daniel thought it was almost cute, how carefully she studied every little thing. The apartment was small, too small for two very different people. But they managed. She made tea with leaves that smelled faintly like honey. She even learned to eat human bread, though she tilted her head each time like she couldn't understand why anyone would eat something so plain. Slowly they adjusted. Slowly the silence between them began to feel normal. But then came the first night. Daniel remembered it clearly. He had gone to sleep late, tired from his job at the cargo docks. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside the window. He had barely drifted into dreams when he felt it, something warm, heavy wrapping around him. At first he panicked. He thought maybe he was trapped, his chest pressed tight, his breath caught. But then his sleepy mind caught up. Arms. It was her arms. Lyra was hugging him. He froze, unsure what to do. Should he push her away? Should he speak? But before he could move, he heard it, the sound of her breathing. It wasn't calm. It wasn't peaceful. It was shaky, trembling, uneven. Her body shivered against his, and then, soft as a whisper, she spoke. Safe. Safe. Daniel's heart stopped. She wasn't just hugging him. She was clinging to him, holding on like he was the only thing between her and the darkness. He could feel her trembling, her breath catching against his shirt, the desperate way her fingers curled around his arm. He didn't move. He didn't know what to say. So he lay still, staring at the ceiling, his chest tight with emotions he didn't understand. In the morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. She moved quietly around the kitchen, making tea, humming faintly under her breath. Her eyes didn't meet his, and Daniel wondered if she even remembered. Maybe it was an accident, he thought. Maybe she just rolled over in her sleep, but the next night it happened again, and again, and again. Every single night, without fail, Lyra's arms found him. She wrapped herself around him, holding him close like a child with a stuffed toy. And every single night she whispered the same words in her sleep. Safe, safe. As if she were reminding herself that she wasn't alone. At first, Daniel tried to ignore it. He told himself it wasn't his business. He told himself it would stop eventually. But deep inside he wondered, why him? Why was he the one she held on to? The question followed him through the days. He would watch her across the table as she sipped her tea, her glowing eyes distant, her smile faint but tired. He would see her pause at the window, staring out at the city lights like she was searching for a star that wasn't there. And every night, when her arms found him again, he felt the same ache in his chest. She wasn't just sleeping. She was surviving. Daniel realized something important that week. This wasn't just a habit. It wasn't comfort for her. It was something deeper. Something she couldn't live without, and he didn't know whether to be afraid of it or honored by it, because to her he wasn't just a roommate. He wasn't even a human. To her, he was safety. Daniel told himself it was nothing. He told himself it didn't matter. But the truth was he couldn't stop thinking about it. Every night, without fail, Lyra came to him, and every morning she acted like nothing had happened. It became a routine, like brushing teeth or making breakfast. At first, Daniel resisted in his mind. He would lie awake, stiff, pretending to sleep as her arms slid around him, her body curling gently against his. He could feel her trembling slow down. her breaths growing steady as if his presence alone calmed the storms inside her. The strange part was, Daniel wasn't sure when it stopped feeling awkward. Somewhere between the 1st and the 10th night, he realized he was no longer fighting it. Sometimes he even shifted a little, making it easier for her to hold him. He didn't admit that to himself out loud. But deep down, he knew he didn't hate it. Still, the question remained, why him? One night, he decided he had to know. He stayed awake on purpose, his body still, his eyes barely open. The room was dim, the city lights leaking faintly through the thin curtains. Lyra moved softly, quietly, almost like a shadow. She sat on her bed for a long time, her glowing eyes distant. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, twisting the edge of the blanket. She looked afraid. Finally, she stood and crossed the small space between their beds. Her steps were slow, hesitant, as if she expected rejection at any second. When she lay down beside him, Daniel felt her arms shaking as they slid around him. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder, and only then did her breathing steady. Daniel's heart ached. She wasn't just sleepwalking. She wasn't doing this by accident. She was choosing it, needing it like someone desperate for air. That night, he didn't move away. He let her stay. And when she whispered the word safe again, he realized something painful. She was holding on to him like he was the last piece of her world. The next morning, Daniel sat across from her at the small kitchen table. She sipped her tea slowly, her silver-streaked hair falling over her face. She didn't look at him. She never did in the mornings. Daniel wanted to ask. The word sat on his tongue. Why do you hug me? Why do you need me? But he stayed silent. He was afraid that if he asked, she would stop. And for some reason, the thought of her arms not finding him at night made his chest feel empty. So the routine continued. Days passed. Daniel began noticing little things. Lyra always hesitated before going to bed, as if preparing herself for a long battle. Her eyes carried a tired glow, heavy with exhaustion, until the moment she held him. Only then did her face soften, her body rest. Sometimes, in her sleep, she whispered things he didn't understand. Words in her language, broken and quiet. Sometimes she cried softly, her tears soaking into his shirt. Daniel never said anything. He just lay there, letting her cling to him. And slowly he began to understand. This wasn't just about comfort. This was about survival. One evening, after a long day at work, Daniel came home to find her sitting by the window. She was hugging her knees, staring at the stars with a faraway look. Couldn't sleep? He asked gently. She didn't answer. She just shook her head, her hair falling across her face. That night, when she came to him, her arms clung tighter than ever. She buried her face against his chest, and her voice cracked as she whispered the word again. Safe. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time, he raised his own arm and rested it around her shoulders. She froze, startled, then slowly relaxed. Her breathing evened out and her trembling stopped. He didn't know why, but in that moment, Daniel felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just letting her hold him anymore. He was holding her too, and somehow that made all the difference. By the end of the second week, Daniel realized a hard truth. Lyra wasn't just using him as a stuffed toy. She was holding on to him because, without him, she couldn't face the night at all. And instead of pushing her away, Daniel found himself making peace with it. No, more than that, he was starting to need it too. Daniel could not keep the question inside any longer. For days, he carried it like a stone in his chest. Every night, Lyra's arms wrapped around him, and every morning she sat quietly at the table, drinking tea as if nothing had happened. But Daniel was human. He could not live with silence forever. One morning, the words finally escaped. Lyra, he said softly, sitting across from her. Why do you hold me every night? The moment he spoke, the air seemed to freeze. Her hands, which had been gently holding the teacup, went still. She didn't look up. Her glowing eyes stayed fixed on the steam rising from her drink. For a long moment, Daniel thought she would not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, On my world, no one sleeps alone. Daniel blinked. He waited, but she didn't continue. Slowly, carefully, he leaned forward. What do you mean? Her fingers tightened around the cup, knuckles pale against lavender skin. It is our way. Since birth, we hold one another. Families, friends, even strangers in need. The night is heavy for us. The dark feels endless. We need warmth, heartbeat, breath close by. Without it, she paused, her voice cracking. Without it, the mind suffers. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He remembered her trembling. Her whispered words, safe, you mean? You can't sleep without someone near you? He asked quietly. She nodded, her silver-streaked hair falling to hide her face. I tried at first, when I came here. I told myself I would learn, that I must learn, but her shoulders shook faintly. Every night the dark crushed me. Every night I felt myself breaking until I found you. The last words came out in a broken whisper. Daniel sat frozen. His chest felt heavy, like someone had pressed a stone deep inside. He thought of her small movements each night, the way she hesitated before coming to him, the way her arms trembled as they wrapped around him. He thought of her whisper, safe, safe, and realized it wasn't just a dream. It was a prayer. Lyra still didn't look at him. She sat hunched, her teacup trembling in her hands. I am sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to make you carry my weakness. I should have been stronger. I should not have needed you. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her she wasn't weak. That needing someone wasn't weakness at all. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he stood slowly and came around the table. Lyra flinched as he moved closer, as if expecting anger. But Daniel only reached out and gently touched her shoulder. She looked up at him then, her glowing eyes wide, glassy with tears she had tried to hide. Lyra, he said quietly, you don't need to be strong all the time. Not with me. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Only a single tear slid down her cheek. That night, Daniel felt different as her arms wrapped around him. It wasn't awkward anymore. It wasn't confusing. He understood now. He wasn't her toy or her habit or her strange mistake. He was her anchor. When she whispered safe against his chest, Daniel finally answered. He placed his hand gently on her arm and whispered back, You are. Her body stilled. Then, slowly, she relaxed more deeply than he had ever felt before. Her breathing evened out, soft and steady, and for the first time Daniel realized that maybe it wasn't just about her. Maybe he needed this too. The days after that grew warmer between them. Lyra spoke a little more, her voice softer but steadier. She told him about her planet, about the long nights that stretched for months and the way families would curl together in great halls to survive the endless dark. She spoke of songs sung in whispers, hands linked in circles, and how no one was ever left alone. Daniel listened. Every word sank deep into him. He could almost see it. The glowing halls, the warmth of hundreds breathing together, the comfort of never facing the dark alone. And now he understood the sadness in her eyes when she looked out at the city. Here she had none of that. Here she had only him. It was a heavy thought. But Daniel didn't feel trapped. Instead, he felt something else rising in his chest. Something fierce. Something protective. If he was all she had, then he would not fail her. That night, when she came to him, Daniel didn't just let her hug him. He turned toward her, wrapped his own arms around her trembling form, and whispered again, You're safe, Lyra. Always. And for the first time, she smiled in her sleep. After Lyra revealed her truth, something changed between them. The silence that once felt heavy now felt soft, almost gentle. Daniel no longer wondered why she came to him each night, he knew. And knowing made all the difference. He began to notice things he had ignored before. The way her eyes glowed a little brighter after a full night of sleep. The way her hand shook less when she held her tea in the morning. The way her laughter, though still rare, sounded like music when it slipped past her lips. Daniel realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was slowly healing. One evening, after dinner, Lyra lingered in the kitchen instead of disappearing to her bed. She stood by the window, her gaze on the glowing city lights. Daniel joined her quietly, standing just a step away. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. She tilted her head, her hair brushing her shoulder. The stars, she murmured. On my world you can see them so clearly. Here, they are hidden. Daniel followed her gaze. The city sky was dull, hazy with light pollution. Only a few stars managed to shine through. Do you miss it? He asked. Her glowing eyes softened. Every day. Then, after a pause, she added, But it hurts less now. Daniel didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He understood that the reason was standing right beside her. At night, their closeness grew natural. Lyra no longer crept into his bed with hesitation. She moved with quiet trust, curling against him like she belonged there, and Daniel no longer lay stiff, pretending. He welcomed her, sometimes pulling the blanket over her shoulders, sometimes whispering soft words when he felt her tremble. One night, as she held him, Daniel asked softly, "Did you ever have someone like this before? On your planet?" Her breathing slowed. Then she answered, her voice trembling, "Yes, my family. My sister, she would hold me when the dark was too strong, but she is gone now." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to ask how, but he saw the pain in her eyes and stopped himself. Instead, he simply tightened his arm around her. "I'm here now," he whispered. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't respond. But then her fingers curled gently into his shirt and she whispered back, "I know." The days passed and something unspoken bloomed between them. They cooked meals together, sometimes laughing when she confused human spices. They walked to the nearby park, where she loved the sound of running water from the fountain. She asked questions about human history, about music, about the strange way humans celebrated birthdays with fire on cakes. Daniel found himself enjoying her presence more than he expected. It wasn't just about responsibility anymore. It wasn't just about keeping her safe at night. He wanted to be near her. He wanted her smile, her voice, her trust. But sometimes he caught glimpses of the sorrow she carried. Once he woke in the night to find her quietly crying, her face buried in his chest. Another time he noticed the way she avoided certain sounds, like loud engines or sharp alarms, her whole body stiffening. She carried scars he couldn't see. But he didn't press her. He knew she would tell him when she was ready. Until then, he could only be her anchor. One evening, as the rain pattered softly against the window, Lyra turned to Daniel with a serious expression. "Do you not find it strange?" she asked. "Find what strange?" He replied, "That you allow me this closeness, that you let me hold you, on your world." "This is not normal," Daniel chuckled softly. "Maybe not, but it feels right." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a long moment she just looked at him. Then she smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. "It feels right to me, too." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. That night, as they lay together, Daniel found himself thinking about the future. This had started as an arrangement, just two strangers sharing an apartment. But it had become so much more. He didn't know what they were yet. Friends, something deeper? All he knew was that he didn't want it to end. When Lyra whispered safe that night, Daniel didn't just answer with words. He pulled her closer, pressing his forehead gently against hers, and whispered, "Always." And in that quiet room, with the rain tapping the window and her arms around him, Daniel realized something new. He wasn't just her safety, she was becoming his too. Daniel's life had fallen into a rhythm. Work at the cargo docks during the day, quiet meals in the evening, and Lyra's arms around him at night. It was strange, yes, but it was also comforting. He was no longer just living with an alien roommate. He was sharing his life with her, but the outside world didn't see it that way. One afternoon, at the docks, a co-worker noticed the dark circles under Daniel's eyes. "Rough nights?" the man joked, clapping him on the shoulder. Daniel laughed nervously. "Something like that," the man grinned. "Your alien roommate keeping you busy?" Daniel froze. He had never told anyone the details, but rumors spread fast. "She just has trouble sleeping," he admitted. "So sometimes He stopped, unsure how to explain. The man smirked. "Don't tell me she hugs you like a pillow or something." Daniel's silence was all the answer needed. The man burst out laughing. "Oh man, you're her stuffed toy. That's what you are, just a little comfort object." The words stung more than Daniel expected. He forced a smile, brushed it off, but the laughter followed him the rest of the day. Her stuffed toy. That night, when Lyra reached for him as always, Daniel hesitated. The man's voice echoed in his mind, poisoning the moment. Was that really what he was? Just an object for her comfort? A tool to help her sleep? He turned slightly away, leaving her arms half extended in the dark. "Daniel," she whispered, confusion in her voice. "I'm tired," he muttered quickly, forcing himself to stay still. "Just go to sleep." There was silence. Then slowly her arms withdrew. Daniel lay stiff, staring at the ceiling, his chest aching. Beside him, he heard the faintest sound, a muffled sob she tried to hide. And for the first time in weeks, the room felt cold. The following days were heavy. Lyra kept her distance. She no longer came to him at night, no longer sought his warmth. She curled up on her own bed, shivering quietly, her glowing eyes dull with exhaustion. Daniel hated it. He missed the way she fit against him, the way her breathing steadied when she held him. But every time he thought about reaching out, that mocking voice returned. "You're her stuffed toy." At work, he tried to focus, but his thoughts always drifted back to her. At home, the silence was unbearable. Lyra still made tea, still hummed softly, but there was a wall between them now. One evening, Daniel found her sitting by the window, hugging her knees. Her silver-streaked hair fell over her face, hiding her expression. For a long time, he stood there, unsure what to say. Finally, he spoke. "Lyra, are you okay?" She flinched at his voice. Then she whispered, "Yes." But her trembling shoulders told him the truth. Daniel wanted to ask her to come back, to hold him like before. But the words stuck in his throat. What if I'm nothing to her? What if it's all one-sided? So he stayed silent, and the silence hurt more than anything. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, the bed feeling far too empty without her. He could hear her on the other side of the room, shifting restlessly, her breathing uneven. In the dark, her voice broke through, soft and broken. "I'm sorry, Daniel." He sat up, startled.
For what?
Her glowing eyes shone faintly in the dim light as she looked at him. "For using you, for making you carry my weakness. I thought, maybe you didn't mind, but I see now I was wrong. You are not my toy. You are not my tool, and yet, without you, the nights feel endless. I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't survive them alone." Her words pierced through Daniel's chest. She wasn't manipulating him. She wasn't using him. She was breaking without him. And suddenly the insult from his coworker felt meaningless. Because this wasn't about being a toy. This was about being her anchor, her lifeline. Daniel's eyes stung. He swung his legs over the bed and walked to her side. She flinched as if expecting rejection, but instead he sat down and gently took her trembling hand. "You were never wrong," he said softly. "I wasn't upset because of you. I was upset because of me, because I let someone else's words get into my head." Her glowing eyes widened, shimmering with tears. Daniel squeezed her hand. "You don't need to apologize. You don't need to carry this alone. And you don't need to worry about being a burden. I choose this, Lyra. I choose to be here. For you." Her lips trembled. Then she broke, falling into his arms, her sobs muffled against his chest. Daniel held her tightly, his own tears slipping free. That night, for the first time in days, they lay together again. And as she whispered safe against his heart, Daniel whispered back with all the conviction in his soul, "Always." After that night of tears and confessions, something shifted between Daniel and Lyra. The wall of silence broke. The cold distance vanished. But what replaced it was not just their old closeness, it was something deeper, something raw, something fragile and strong at the same time. Daniel had thought he was only helping her, giving her comfort so she could survive the night. But now he realized something important. Somewhere along the way, he had grown to need her just as much. The next morning, Daniel woke up with her still in his arms. Her face was tucked against his chest. Her silver-streaked hair spread across the pillow like threads of light. Her breathing was steady, calm, peaceful. He lay there for a while, simply watching her. He had never seen her look so untroubled, so safe. When she stirred awake, she blinked at him, her glowing eyes soft with sleep. For a moment, she looked startled, almost shy, but then she whispered, "Good morning," in a voice so gentle it made Daniel's heart ache. "Good morning," he whispered back, and for the first time the words felt like more than just routine. In the days that followed, they grew closer in small but powerful ways. Lyra began to open up more, telling him about her childhood. She spoke of her sister, who used to sing her to sleep during the long nights on her planet. She described the great halls where families slept in clusters, arms and legs tangled together, sharing warmth and comfort like one living body. When the dark came, she said softly one evening, "We survived because we had each other, but when I came here, I had no one, until you." Daniel listened in silence, his chest tight with emotion. He couldn't imagine growing up like that, never sleeping alone, always surrounded by the presence of others. And he couldn't imagine the pain of losing it all, only to be left in a cold, lonely world. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. Not as long as I'm here. She looked at him then, her glowing eyes shimmering with something fragile. Hope. At night, their closeness changed too. Before, she had always been the one to reach for him. Now sometimes Daniel was the first to move. He would open his arms and she would melt into them without hesitation. Sometimes he would whisper soft words. You're safe. I'm here. It's okay. And he could feel her body relax, her trembling fade. But what surprised him most was how much peace he found in those moments. When she held him, when he felt her heartbeat against his chest, the worries of the world seemed to fade away. The loneliness he had carried for years, the quiet emptiness of his small life. It all disappeared in her embrace. He wasn't just giving her safety. She was giving it back to him. Still, there were hard nights. Sometimes she woke from dreams with tears on her face, clutching him desperately as if she feared he might vanish. Sometimes she whispered names he didn't know. Perhaps family. Perhaps friends lost to the war she had once escaped. On those nights, Daniel didn't try to stop her tears. He only held her tighter, whispering gently until her sobs softened. He let her know she didn't have to face the darkness alone anymore. And each time she would whisper through the tears, safe. As if reminding herself, Daniel always answered, yes, always safe. And he meant it. One night, after a particularly hard day at work, Daniel returned home to find Lyra waiting at the door. Her hands fidgeted nervously, her glowing eyes uncertain. Daniel, she said softly, am I too much? Do I ask too much from you? The question hit him like a stone. He saw the fear in her face, the way her shoulders tensed as if bracing for rejection. He stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. Lyra, listen to me. You're not too much. You're not a burden. Do you know why? She shook her head, her lips trembling. Because I need this too, he said honestly. I need you too. Her eyes widened, shimmering with tears. And then slowly a smile broke through. A small, trembling smile, but one full of light. She stepped forward and hugged him tightly, burying her face in his chest. And Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if nothing in the universe could take her away. That night, when they lay together, there were no whispers of apology, no hesitation. Just two broken souls who had found in each other something rare and precious. As she drifted into sleep, her arms secure around him, Daniel realized the truth. He wasn't her stuffed toy. He was her partner in the dark. And without her, he wasn't sure he could face the night either. Time passed, and Daniel and Lyra fell into a rhythm that felt almost natural, as if the strange beginning of their shared nights had been leading to this all along. What once was awkward became comforting. What once felt unusual became their way of life. For Daniel, every night ended the same. Her arms around him, her warmth pressed against his chest, her breathing steady and slow. And every morning began with the same soft glow in her eyes, as if waking up beside him was a gift she never expected to have. But beneath their comfort, a storm was quietly building. One day a message arrived from Lyra's people. Daniel found her sitting stiffly on the couch, clutching a small glowing device in her trembling hands. Her eyes glowed brighter than usual, but her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. What is it? Daniel asked carefully. She looked at him with tears forming. They want me back. The words hit him like ice water. He tried to steady his voice. Back home? She nodded. My family. They finally sent for me. They found a safe place far away from the war. A colony where we can start again. Her voice cracked. I should feel happy, Daniel. I should feel joy. But instead, I feel only fear. Daniel sat beside her, his chest tight. Fear of leaving? Fear of losing this, she whispered, reaching for his hand. Her fingers wrapped around his tightly, almost desperately. Fear of losing you. That night, Lyra clung to him harder than ever. She trembled against him, whispering half-formed words in her language, words Daniel didn't understand but felt in his bones. He didn't tell her to stop. He didn't tell her it would be okay. Because deep down, he was afraid too. He didn't want to let her go. For the first time in years, his life had meaning beyond routine. He wasn't just working, eating, and existing. He was needed. He was loved in a way he hadn't believed possible. And now it might all end. Days passed with a heavy silence between them. They still held each other at night, but the fear of goodbye lingered in every breath. Daniel began to imagine what it would be like to return to his bed alone, to wake up without her warmth, to hear only silence in the apartment. It felt unbearable. One evening, as the sun set, painting the room in shades of orange and gold, Daniel finally spoke. "Lyra, do you want to go?" She stared at him, eyes wide, as if the question itself hurt. "I don't know. My people are my blood, my family. They are waiting. But you are my heart." Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands.